From the 1920s onwards, Disney has been a beloved animation studio, responsible for some of the best films the last century has had to offer. As a company, they really understand how to tell a good story, and they know that the best stories require at least a small dark element. And Disney knows how to do it right. From skeleton armies to spirits floating through the sky, all the way to murder and betrayal, here are 10 Disney movies that kids never expected to get so dark. And since you're already here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all of our great new releases. Before we begin, can you guess the film from these emojis? Stay tuned until the end of the video to find out. Return to Oz. Based loosely on L. Frank Baum's Oz series and Your Deepest Darkest Nightmares, Return to Oz was Disney's horrifying take on Baum's beloved book series. Families watched waiting to be taken back into the wonderful world of Oz, only to be dragged straight into some kind of murderous hellhole. You can't swing a cat without unearthing something horrifying, and it just goes from bad to worse. Hope for a nice Disney movie disappeared the minute we found Dorothy in a mental hospital awaiting electroshock therapy. When we get to Oz, Emerald City is in ruins, and all her friends have been turned to stone. The brightest thing the movie has to offer is the killer mid-80s eyeshadow on the Wheelers, a terrifying game of people on wheels. They wear hats with scary contorted faces on them. The real clincher is the scene most of us remember because it's so horrifying that we just can't seem to repress it. You know the one, right? Where Dorothy and her pals find themselves face to face with Princess Mombi's room of screaming heads, and Mombi head swaps her faces around like a what's-her-face doll. Then she threatens to take Dorothy's head when she's old enough and locks her in a tower. If we never see that scene again, it'll be way too soon.
Soon the Black Cauldron will be mine.
The Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron was the first of Disney's animated films to earn itself a PG rating. Based on Lloyd Alexander's The Chronicles of Prydain, the film saw Disney stepping into the realm of sword and sorcery fantasy. Even from the start, it was a darker sort of storytelling than Disney had ever gone with before. It even used a darker color palette and different animation style to the usual one that is so iconic as Disney's. The film's villain, the Horned King, steals the Black Cauldron to create an army of undead or cauldron-born soldiers. The Horned King is gaunt, red-eyed, and claw-fingered, and terrifying, mainly because John Hurt lends the character his voice and, well, he's John Hurt. The Cauldron-born scene itself scared kids silly. And the worst thing about it is that the cut that made it into the final film was a toned-down version, because the original traumatized kids in the test screening so much. The cauldron begins to spew flames, melting skulls, and a nuclear green smoke that invades the skulls and skeletons of dead soldiers in a really unsettling way. The reanimation is gory, and the skeletons stagger out of the castle in the green smoke fully armed and entirely terrifying. Fantasia. Widely regarded to be one of the best animated films ever made, Fantasia is a collection of 8 smaller segments set to classical music where the score drives the story. The film is probably best remembered for Mickey Mouse in his cute little wizard hat, but the last segment, Night on Bald Mountain, was incredibly dark. Set to the very atmospheric Night on Bald Mountain, the devil Chernabog awakens on the mountain at midnight. He's a monstrous presence resembling a huge black gargoyle with massive bat wings, and an expression that barely changes and taunts our nightmares. He summons demons and spirits to the mountain, and the segment is littered with demons, harpies, and skeletons who dance and sing in literal hellfire. And one especially horrifying scene sees the flames dancing in Chernabog's hand become women, then beasts, then demons in a transformation that is painful to watch. As dawn begins to break, the demons contort in pain as they are driven back to where they come from. Chernabog closes his wings, becoming part of the mountain once more, and making us question the state of every mountain for longer than we probably should. As a serene mist washes over, monks with lights walk to the ruins of a cathedral, and we're just really glad the whole ordeal is over. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was Disney's first feature-length animation film, and something no one really thought was possible at the time. It was full of birds, love, and a narcissistic queen who sends a huntsman into a forest to cut out her stepdaughter's heart so that she can keep being the fairest of them all. Makes a lot of sense. He lets her escape, and she befriends the forest animals and seven dwarves. The queen's mirror reveals that she's still alive, so she turns herself into an old hag. Most of it is in shadow, but we see her hair and hands transform as she clutches her throat, and that's terrifying enough. She creates a sleeping death potion and puts it into an apple. The spell can only be broken by true love's kiss, but she's not bothered because Snow will be buried alive. She finds the cottage, fakes a heart attack, and convinces Snow to take a bite by telling her it grants wishes. The dwarves chase the queen to a cliff where she is struck by lightning and then tumbles off the edge. In the creepiest display of affection ever, the dwarves put her in a glass coffin so she can still be seen. A year later, she's still there, and the prince comes by and gives her a big ol' smooch, even though he thinks she's dead, which luckily wakes her up. Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 is better known as the film which turned everyone with a heart into an emotional wreck, but it's just as dark as it is sad. The film deals with some tough themes, such as growing up, abandonment, and betrayal. Andy is clearing out his room, ready to move out to college, putting our favorite talking toys into a trash bag meant to go into the attic. But there's a mix-up and his mom accidentally puts the bag out in the street. Broken-hearted and believing they aren't wanted, they get into the donation box for Sunnyside Daycare. Sunnyside starts off like a utopia, but things quickly turn sour, with Lotso running the place like a prison and then trapping the toys inside. He became this way as a result of his old owner abandoning and replacing him, causing him to believe toys aren't really loved. Woody breaks into Sunnyside to rescue his friends, using the trash as an escape route. They are nearly crushed by a garbage truck, shredded and incinerated, but were luckily rescued by the aliens and a giant crane just in time. The scene had one of the most harrowing displays of friendship in any film, but it was brutal to watch.
Touch as I say.
Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty was the last fairy tale film made by Disney for 30 years. Not for lack of love for princesses, but because its underperformance at the box office almost crippled the company. It's well remembered as a classic Disney film about true love, a sleeping princess, and a fire-breathing dragon. The villain, Maleficent, is well loved and one of the most iconic characters. She definitely scared us all silly as kids, and we weren't sure if she was scarier as a fairy or as a dragon. We shouldn't be surprised by that though, considering her name comes from the Latin word for harmful or evil magic. Her design was a cross between a bat and the devil in medieval religious art. She cursed a baby to die on her 16th birthday, and when Aurora was in her death sleep, she kidnapped Prince Philip with the intention of keeping him imprisoned until he was old, then releasing him to wake her up. When the fairies helped him to escape, she attacked him with lightning. She then surrounded the castle with thick thorns, and when he got through those, she turned into a dragon to fight him herself. Maleficent's dragon transformation and fight by the cliffside still gives us fiery nightmares. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was released as a segment on the package film The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, before being released separately some years later. It's based on Washington Irving's short story of the same name, and follows the superstitious Ichabod Crane. He comes to the haunted town of Sleepy Hollow in New York as the new schoolmaster, and fights with Brom Bones for the affection of the beautiful Katrina. At a Halloween party, Bones tells the tale of the Headless Horseman, a ghost who was killed by a cannonball in a recent conflict. He roams Sleepy Hollow looking for a new one. On the way home, a paranoid Ichabod keeps imagining the ghost as he travels the woods and cemetery, but the real ghost appears, and it's terrifying. He laughs maniacally, holding a glowing pumpkin in one hand and his sword in the other. He then chases Ichabod, in a horse chase that might have been funny had he not been trying to behead Ichabod with his sword at the time. When Ichabod gets out of his reach, he throws his fiery pumpkin head at him. All they found of Ichabod was his hat, and we found ourselves never leaving the house at Halloween again.
I don't care how you kill the little beast, but do it! And do it now!
101 Dalmatians. The prospect of owning 101 Dalmatians is a terrifying prospect for any adult, but it's got nothing on the story leading to Anita and Roger having that many puppies to begin with. Their Dalmatians, Perdita and Pongo, have 15 puppies, which Cruella de Vil tries to use her enormous fortune to buy off of them. Her introduction to the scene is announced by lightning, and during the rest of the scene she is rude, mocking, and throws a temper tantrum rivaling a child's when she doesn't get her own way. She threatens to have her revenge and leaves. She's terrifying in both appearance and personality. Cruella became a bit of a boogeyman figure to many kids, most of whom just sat down to watch a film about dozens of cute dogs, and got more than they were expecting. She had her henchmen kidnap the dogs and take them to her home at the aptly named Hell Hall with the intention of turning them into a dog skin coat. The dogs are found, along with 84 other kidnapped puppies. They all make it home safe and sound, with their owners resolving to use the money Roger got for the classic song about Cruella to buy a bigger house. Cars 2. Cars 2 is the second film following the anthropomorphic race car Lightning McQueen and his friends. Cars 2 is a spy film, centering around the New World Grand Prix and an oil plot. A new fuel named Alanol is required to be used in the race, but explodes when exposed to an electromagnetic pulse. The film makes use of a lot of classic spy film devices, such as the car chase, which works well in a film about cars, but also having a spy get beaten up in a public bathroom, referencing a scene in Casino Royale where Bond beats a guy to death in a public bathroom. A number of cars are injured in the oil explosions, with McQueen nearly being one of them. Mater's involvement with the spies gets a bomb planted on him, and he narrowly avoids getting blown up. The franchise's third installment is due for release this summer and looks set down a dark path. The first trailer showed McQueen crashing in a race, making use of a more realistic style and drained color palette, and scaring a lot of kids in the process. It's hard to know what's going on until the film is released, but we know McQueen is having to work to secure his place at the top against faster racers. Sorry. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Based on the Victor Hugo novel of the same name, The Hunchback of Notre Dame is generally considered to be the darkest animated Disney film. Huge changes were made to the story to tone it down for kids, but the film still deals with mature themes like infanticide, murder, lust, sin, and damnation. Everything dark comes right back to Frollo. Quasimodo only ends up in his care as the cathedral's bell ringer because Frollo murdered his mother as she tried to escape him, and the archdeacon stopped him from murdering baby Quasimodo too. He spends 20 years telling Quasimodo that he's a monster, then proceeds to try to kill an entire community of gypsies, all the while developing an infatuation for a young gypsy girl named Esmeralda, and leading to perhaps the greatest villain song in a Disney film, Hellfire. The scene was a terrifying gothic masterpiece, complete with gigantic red-cloaked figures who melt into the fire and ignite as he sings about his lustful feelings toward her and accuses her of putting a spell on him. He then burns down half of Paris in his pursuit of her and sentences her to burn at the stake. We were almost glad when he died from falling into molten lava, giving the other characters a shot at a happy ending. What Disney movies were darker than you expected them to be? Let us know in the comments section below, and if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more great content. And while we're at it, the answer to the emoji quiz is...